behind the jokes, and Van DJK, for example, had a long-standing intense hatred for a single someone in his life, thus so intense that he later admitted it, regarding how much he hated him. Not many people associated with Van DJK. Knew existed, and its backstory is unexpected and far more intertwined than not many would have guessed. Childhood and profession. Van DJK Richard Wayne Dick Van DJK, as we all know him, was born in West Virginia on December 13, 1925, Missouri's Plains. Hazel, his mother, was his father. Lauren was a stenographer. Salesperson. Dick grew up in Danville, Illinois, along with Jerry, his younger sibling. Van JKK will pursue a career in acting. Could even appear on The Dick as his brother, The Van DJK Show. However, the Van DJK household, Dick's family name is of Dutch heritage, was a blend of Irish, Scottish, and his family tree's English ancestry returns, even to John Alden, a passenger on the Mayflower. During the 1940s, Dick immersed himself in Danville High School, himself in the choir and theatrical club, hessing alongside Donald O'Connor and Bobby Short. Those names would one day be extra big in the entertainment industry. Then, Dick has two options for his career: pursuing a career in ministry or a Eventually, the stage won his affection. Prior to his career could commence, but World War I got in the way. Dick dropped out of school in his senior year to serve in the United States in 1944. Army Air Force. At first he was experiencing a difficult time joining because he wasn't aware. He was later admitted as a radio operator rather than a pilot broadcaster before transitioning into entertainmentimist troops in the United States. In 1946, following his release, he went back to home and ultimately earned a high school diploma. School in 2004. In actuality, Dick's career in entertainment began when he was a teenager in the late 1940s, radio disc jockey at Danville's WDN. Soon after, he joined the group of Phil Erickson's comedic routine named Van Eric and the Merry Mutes. They carried out lip synchronization with old music and mime extra chords around the West Coast, ultimately obtaining a local Atlanta television program. In the Dick was starting to make it in the 1950s. Onto the TV, he produced his first in-work TV on a once opportunity in 1954 and made appearances in programs like the Pat Boone Chevy and Phil Silver Show. During this time, he was helped by a friend from the Army to land a 7-year contract with CBS. Dick even served as the CBS morning show's anchor, with his newsman being Walter Conite. His 1959 saw a significant Broadway debut with the Girls vs. Boys scenario. However, by a turning point was reached. Birdie Dick portrayed Albert Peterson in 1961, for which he was awarded a Best Featured Actor Tony Award winner in Amelie. Additionally, he participated in Anne Margaret in the 1963 film adaptation as well as Janet Leigh. Naturally, Dick's pinnacle arrived in 1961 with The Dick Van Dyke Show, 1966, in which he wrote and performed in a comedy Mary Tyler Moore and Rob Petrie together, though the show is still one of the Emmy winners. Of the best sitcoms on TV. Next, Mary Poppins 19, in which he was thrilled as even though Bert the Chimney Sweep infamously poor Cockney accent, critics ignored the film, which was an enormous success and earned him a Grammy. From the late 1960s onward, Dick continued to be active. In television shows and motion pictures, experimenting with drama, comedy, and dark. Over time, he created considering himself to be among Hollywood's finest adaptable actors, consistently upholding heart, humor, and charm. Dick Van Dyke's family romantic life. An individual path. The off-screen life of Dick Van Dyke. Hazelway's been as complex and lively as his life on TV. In 1948, heavy ritual of marriage with Marge in the most unusual way. While broadcasting, the couple got married. Live on the Bride and Bride radio showroom at Chapman Park in Los Angeles. Together, they had 4 kids. Carrie, Stacy, Barry, and Christian Beth. However, following years of drama, their union came to an end in 1984. Following a protracted separation, Van was one of the people that increased the tension. Dick's liaison with Michelle, an actress Triola Marvin, first noticed him in 1976. Their bond gave him a lot of, and he subsequently acknowledged that it was among the causes of his failure reunion with Willett. Nevertheless, Michelle and Van DJK stayed together for over 30 years till her premature passing in 2009. Numerous after several years, Van JKK found love once more in a surprising way. In 2012, at the age of 86, he married makeup artist 46-year-old artist his junior. Those 6 years prior, the two had initially met at the Sage Awards, and their relationship developed to grow into a union that is still in existence today. The family of Van Dyke Hazelways had a good relationship with his Barry, his son, and his grandsons. He even made an appearance alongside Shane and Kerry. In Diagnosis murder episodes. Apart from television, even his relative's life went through a period of sadness. His granddaughter Jessica passed away in 1987 because Tourette syndrome is a very uncommon illness. Connected to the aspirin use by Van DJK was honored by becoming a public service recording by a spokeswoman announced to get kids and parents are aware of the risks associated with aspirin. In young children, Despite being well known and troubled by personal issues, Van Dyke stayed grounded. He went on to participate in his church, where he served as an Presbyterian church elder and instructed Sunday school. He also liked reading books about theology written by males like Dietrich Paul Tillich and Martin Buber Bonhoeffer. Van Dyke's life, even in his senior years, took unexpected turns. 2013 saw him while traveling on the road in Los Angeles. The car burst into flames out of nowhere. Thankfully, a passerby dragged him away of the flaming vehicle, abandoning Van Dyke secure despite the fact that his Jaguar was burned to ash. In terms of politics, Van Dyke has never been hesitant to voice their opinions. He was in favor of the 2016 Democrats in addition to the 2020 Democratic primaries, expressing his worries in reference to Donald Trump's administration. He supported Kamala Harris in her 2024 run for president. Van Dyke most recently ended the horrifying California December 2024 wildfires while he was neighbors brought him to safety after crashing due to exhaustion in making an attempt to reach his car. January 2025, a month later, he had to once more depart toward the Palisades. Fire. Thankfully, his home in Malibu survived both disasters. Unharmed during it all. Love, grief, happiness and peril. Dick Van Dyke's resilience is also as evident as his ability, health issues, and struggles with addiction. Behind Dick Van Dyke's smile and relaxed manner, there were actual conflicts that shaped his life. He battled alcoholism for years that destroyed his personal and health life. He had reached his lowest point by 1972 and realized he needed assistance. Van Dyke admitted himself to a medical facility for 3 weeks in order for him to receive treatment for his. Though it wasn't always easy, in the end he became a better man and proving that regardless of despite how bleak things may seem, change is apart from his drinking. In addition, Van Dyke was a chain smoker. Over the most of his adult life. The habit followed him even into his later years. By the early 2000s, however, he hated cigarette gum as a last resort to resist the temptations. During an interview in 2013 with the London Daily Telegraph, he admitted to have been chewing gum for over 10 years, suggesting how dedicated he was to avoid injury. However, Van's health concerns went further than that. 2013 saw him make a revelation that made people shudder. Spines of fans everywhere. For nearly 7 he has been afflicted for years with a strange neurological disorder. When he tried to lie down, he experienced a continuous pounding on his brain. Doctors performed test after test, but never a conclusive diagnosis. The enigmatic illness depleted him from lack of sleep, and he was forced to postpone appearances because of the crippling fatigue. After several months, Van Dyke postulated that the problem might have been related to his dental implants made of titanium. He tweeted in 2013 that the implants might be in charge of the strangest symptoms, even though medical professionals never was formally confirmed. However, speculation gave him and his followers with a little explanation about the protracted Even amidst the health wars, Van Dyke persisted in his humor, as well as his penchant for performing. However, his health kept getting worse. That influenced his career. Years later, when he was 99 years old in June 2025, at a comedy show, Van Dyke was scheduled to perform in Malibu. Supporters were anticipating seeing him, but he had to postpone it until the last minute because of even though there was no information about precisely what had happened. It became clear that even the great performer had to accept the constraints of age and health. Nevertheless, Van Dyke's honesty about his own struggles has made him someone with whom people can identify. By opening up about alcoholism, smoking and unexplained health issues, he demonstrated that life is not always, even for the man who makes millions happy. What will most impress people is his resilience, no matter the adversity. Van Dyke himself did not duck the criticism. In interviews, he has laughed and said that, if members of the UK catch sight of him, they're on me like a pack of. He once confessed it was the worst Cockney accent ever done, laying the blame on his voice coach, an Irishman, for making it more difficult. He's also apologized in public. When he accepted a prize from BAFTA in 2017, he joked that he wanted to apologize for subjecting them to the worst Cockney accent in the history of film. Part of the issue is that the accent wasn't. Van Dyke fell into American patterns of speech from time to time, retaining H's, employing rhotic R sounds, and not always omitting the T or blunting consonants like a proper Cockney would. Also, nobody ever mentioned to him on the set that it sounded off, though he worked with numerous British actors. As stated by Van Dyke, Julie Andrews informed him afterwards that he never got it right. Nevertheless, Mary Poppins was a commercial success, and his accent flub did not destroy the movie for most. A few enthusiasts maintain that the clumsy accent is even part of the character sapple, since Bert is a fantastical, partially comedic character, not necessarily intended to be wild. Also, his effort remained in the public consciousness. In a 2003 Empire magazine poll, his accent was vetted #2 for the worst movie accents of all time. Still, Van Dyke appears to take it in stride. He doesn't seem bitter, rather, he laughs at it, owns the error, and allows the public to remember him for the happiness and humor brought to the character rather than voice. Mary Poppins and the Blackface. Although Mary Poppins is a cherished classic, some critics have in the past raised awkward questions about one scene: Bert, Dick Van Dyke, and Mary Poppins dancing in top of London rooftops with soot on their faces. In recent decades, this soot effect has been questioned as perhaps triggering blackface themes, as blackface has a long traumatic history of white performers darkening their faces to ridicule black people. In 2019, a professor at Linfield College, Daniel Pollock Pellner, wrote an op-ed for the New York Times claiming Mary Poppins plays with minstrel imagery. He also notes that during the classic Step N dance on the roof, Mary and Bert, whose faces are blackened, are still dancing as if their soot was all part of the game, not something to be wiped. The professor contends that these staged gestures hark back to his blackface caricatures. Pollock Pellner also reaches back to P.L. Travis's original Mary Poppins books and discovers objectionable lines. In one place, a chimney sweep extends his hand toward a woman and she tells him, "Don't touch me, you black heathen." A cook employs the insult Hottentot, a racial epithet to describe someone. He contends that the film derives in part these connotations. Supporters of the film resist firmly. Most claim the soot is merely a chimney sweeps are soot in their line of work, so Mary may become a soot covered during the dance with Bert. They contend that smearing over that fact and calling the scene blackface is an exaggeration. Some point out that the film also employs problem. In 2024, British film censors re-rated Mary Poppins from Universal to PG in part due to references in the film to the term Hottentot. Nevertheless, even those who do think the movie is nostalgic, some of its apologists will argue that the imagery wasn't necessarily racist in intent, but contend that even the best works from the past need to be re-evaluated through contemporary understanding. It's not a matter of denouncing a film that many, but acknowledging that representation does matter and that innocuous-looking visual decisions can have unforeseen historical baggage. Admitting lack of aggressiveness. You might assume someone like Dick Van Dyke, who's had one of the longest, most beloved careers in show business, must have always been pushing, hunting down role after role. But actually, Van Dyke has openly said that in the early days, and even much later, he often waited for work instead of going after it. He counts himself pretty lazy, and it's a big part of the story no one always hears. While a December 2023 appearance on CBS Sunday Morning, Van Dyke responded, "As a businessman, I'm not much good. I would owe a movie or something and come home and just sit down and wait for the finito ring. I wasn't aggressive, so I was out of work a lot because I didn't go out and look for it." He says he didn't mind it. That is, he tolerated those in-between jobs, didn't feel the pressure many actors would. He confesses hadn't have a lot of drive during those early days. Van Dyke says he relied more on luck and opportunity that found him than on hustling or jockeying. Because of that, there were times when he just did not work, not because there were no parts, but because he was not actively looking for them. Even today, Van Dyke looks back and wonders perhaps things might have turned out differently if he had been more aggressive. But he generally balances that against how much has enjoyed his work, how much fun ethos meant to him. He states that pleasure was vital. If he wasn't enjoying himself, he was extremely awful. For Van Dyke, acting has always been a delight more than aspiration. This confession does not sound bitter or sorry in an unpleasant manner. Rather, he talks of it lightly, as if he's shrugging. He is thankful for the career he has had, but he acknowledges being more aggressive in the beginning may have worked out some bumps. Van Dyke's indictment on modern media and screen violence. Dick Van Dyke has long expressed alarm that media nowadays, especially programs aimed at youngsters, have grown more sinister, aggressive, and not as innocent as they used to be. He feels that this modification harms children's morals and thoughts. Addressing Thine 2017, Van Dyke warned The Guardian that video games and movies nowadays have a propensity to show violence and blood, so in all likelihood, that youthful audience members may think it's glitzy, or he envisions Walt Disney. Himself would have been much the way violence is handled disturbs me in the entertainment industry today. He compares this to earlier times when movies for kids were about creativity, wonder, right, and wrong. He recalls show films as a child made children wish to copy polite celebs such as Fred Astaire or Cary Grant. Today he contends children base themselves on criminal or gang life, picking worse role models. He does not sugarcoat it. Van Dyke states that violence and entertainment have almost become interchangeable. He candidly describes today's content creators, generally young, driven by the shock value, and reluctant to observe how what they make affects impressionable brains. Van Dyke even discusses very popular franchises such as Harry Potter, though he alludes to them as tremendously engaging. He contends that they've gone too far with being too scary for younger youngsters. He fears they contribute to the formation of a culture that minimizes darkness rather than encouraging tales of success. Naturally, not everyone does. Van's detractors, according to Dyke, that narratives, flavors, and additionally, audiences today require increased edge, intricacy, and actuality. Media declarations of violence is always detrimental. They argue, ignores genre, context, and their requirement that beauty be a part of art and pain. Others warn that the media available to kids has expanded, more varied and prepared to for challenging topics, bullying, and mental social justice, health, and concerns never handled by an older, simpler fare. They claim that those advancements are important, and not just necessary. However, is not convinced. He is concerned about the following. Generation. Having an excessive amount of faith in the lowest common baser is the target of the denominator. Substance. Components as opposed to young people who are challenged. Issues with dialogue on the Dick Van Dyke performance.